Hi, everybody. My name is Miri. I'm based in the Netherlands, and I've been employed by Sonoco Thermosafe for going to be 3.5 years. I'm home-based, and I am responsible for the business development and account management here in the Benelux, reporting to the headquarters in the UK. In total, 30 years in supply chain logistics, and I've been working in the industry for a long, long time. And I think that doing what I do today with Sonoco Thermosafe brings a little bit of a closure to my role, where I deal with freight forwarders and airlines and pharma companies. And now with the packaging industry, it kind of brings up a whole spectrum of understanding what my customers need. And I'm gonna have a nice conversation today with Shay. I know Shay already for quite a while. And with my background, I grew up in Israel. I started my journey in supply chain logistics in Israel, and also dealing with Israeli customers, Shay being so involved in the pharma logistics and everything that has to do with pharma handling, to be a nice opportunity to discuss the Israeli market and what is actually happening in that region. So enough about me. Shay, you want to present yourself?
Hi, Miri. Thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Shay Haimov. I'm the founder and chairman of the Israeli Pharma and Medical Logistics Forum. And I guess we will talk about it later on in more details.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. We're, very busy. Can you tell a little bit about the Israeli market in terms of the pharmaceutical growth?
Yes, so the pharma industry in Israel is the most stable one. I guess it's one of the most stable industries in Israel. The market is growing since the population in Israel is growing in about 2% every year. So we have a larger population which lives longer, and then therefore there is a demand for medical supplies. Part of that is the pharma industry. We have seen an increase of 4% in the last year of the market, and I believe this market will keep growing in the near future. Part of the products or part of that demand is being manufactured here in Israel, but most of the products are being imported. And especially what we see in these days with the disruptions in the supply chain, it's a huge challenge, but the market is keep growing, and there is always a demand for more.
Yeah, I mean, from my own knowledge and my own experience within the industry, I know that Israel has a very strong presence of pharma companies, and also, manufacturing. The big names are taking an active role within the pharma industry, also within Israel. So, I guess that it has to do a lot with your role and what you nowadays do. I see you're very active. You're all over. I see your posts on LinkedIn. You see people, you talk to people, you hold forums. So what is actually the purpose of IPL Forum? What's your role within the pharma logistics?
So we're trying to do other things that social media. We are actually doing things, and part of it you see on the social media, but IPL was established 10 years ago, and the idea was to share knowledge between the pharma companies and the suppliers, and actually connect all the links along the supply chain. So we gathered pharma companies, service providers, LSPs, freight forwarders, packaging experts, IoTs, and all other important bodies along the chain. And we meet for seminars along the year and roundtables. and we meet to exchange knowledge and to learn about new regulation updates. So this is the core business of IPL. Within the years, we saw there are some gaps or some areas that managers wanted to learn more about. So we have developed a training program, especially in the GDP areas and temperature control logistics. Several hundreds of the managers in Israel already went through our program. And another important things that we do now is we have launched a quality program for suppliers. And the idea is to audit the suppliers in Israel. We agreed on a certain high standard with the industry, with the QA teams in the pharma companies. And after we audit the supplier, we can then share the report with the industry. And this is a real save time and money for everybody. I believe this unique thing that we do will help the industry to develop the suppliers, the logistics partners, and explain the suppliers what they need to do in order to be to provide better service or to meet the regulation.
Okay, it's interesting because it kind of reminds me my days being part of Pharma Aero and doing the same activities with them. So you can kind of actually compare it to the region's Pharma Aero activities. And I
Yeah,
think
actually we are in contact with Pharma Aero and with Frank, and I'll guess we will do some things together. And these initiatives, private initiatives, are very welcomed, and I'm sure we can do very good together.
Excellent. It's really good to share knowledge, and then you also create a very strong partnership with content experts, knowledge sharing, standardization of practices within the industry. So it's a really good thing. I really like it.
Yeah, it's improving the communication between the bodies along the chain. So it's important to get to know them, to know how to communicate with them. And I think it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And another thing that I was kind of interested to know is what do you think are the unique characteristics that would describe the logistics and the supply chain landscape in Israel? You know how the European business work. You have conversations. You are in Europe also. You do tours and conventions here in Europe. How would you then differentiate or compare, the characteristics of the landscape in Israel? What makes it unique?
Well, it is unique, first of all, because Israel is relatively a small country, and the logistics is a little bit easier or different than in Europe. Also, most of the multinational companies have outsourced their supply chain. Their almost entire supply chain in Israel is 3PLs or 4PLs. So you see like 3 or 4 big wholesalers that dominate the majority of the market. And it looks different than in Europe because of that.
Okay. Now, actually, one of the things that I did notice since I started working for Sonoco Thermoset is that the subcontracting and the outsourcing is a trend also not only in Israel but worldwide as well. I see it happening a lot here in Europe. So you see there is subcontracting, main 3PLs and forwarders. Can you name the leaders, or do you?
I won't get into names, of course, but yes, subcontracting is one of the ways to control or to meet the challenges we have in Israel. We see it especially in the storage, in the temperature control storage field, and also in the last mile delivery.
Yeah.
And as long as we see trends like home deliveries and direct to patient and direct from patient shipments, those players that can deliver those unique capabilities will keep doing businesses with the big ones that I mentioned before. Of course, there is always a risk when you use a subcontractor, but I think we know how to control the subcontractor, how to pre-qualify them, how to monitor their activity. And I think subcontracting is something that enables companies to provide the service that they want, even if they don't have all the means.
Yeah, I guess also, that many of the leaders in terms of manufacturing came to the conclusion, that logistics and expertise in shipping, packaging, it's not their core business. They manufacture drugs, right? So in order to make things right and make sure that the goods arrive safely and compliant without any excursions or discards from A to B, it's best to actually provide that to a 3PL that actually is an expert in that and will save them, the hassle, the headache, the money, etc.
Nobody wants to handle packaging. Nobody wants to pre-cool the gel packs. Nobody wants to know how to pack it, how to ship it, how many hours, what is the validation.
Well, that's me.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, if we're talking about outsourcing to the ones who are expert in that, how would you then describe the typical Israeli pharma expert in comparison to other regions in the world?
Okay, I don't know how it works. In every region in the world, there is always something new or something different in each region. But I think the Israeli expert is very involved in what's happening inside the organization. He's in contact with the quality and the regulation and the purchasing. And I think it's a very good thing also, because in Israel, the industry, the pharma industry is very diverse. Like, it's not only generic, it's also biotechnology and gene cell therapy and medical cannabis and clinical trials. Every one of those experts is exposed to a very diverse industry, and therefore it needs to be very professional. It needs to understand in ocean freight and air freight and courier services and packaging and different regulations from the GDP and custom authorities and Ministry of Health regulation. So I think a small country with a diverse industry creates very proactive experts, and I think that's very good.
Actually, one of the things that I also notice when I work with Israelis, either freight forwarders or pharma companies, which are part of, the landscape, their involvement is very high, very determined, very dedicated to the customer as well. So that's really great. And we're finally out of COVID, although we still feel, the remains of the disruption that we had in the last 3 years. Can you tell us a little bit about the industry in Israel, how the industry dealt with the pandemics, the lessons that were learned after the whole disruption? Do you still see that there are problems that are related to post-COVID supply chain issues?
Well, I think, after the very intensive year we had, nobody remembered that there was COVID, or we almost forgot that there was something like that. But I think we learned two things in Israel, at least. First, that we have very good capabilities in Israel in the logistics areas. And second is that those experts that we spoke about are really the guys that we can count on, because the next crisis is right around the corner. It's not if it will happen, it's when it will happen, and it will happen. And I think it's good to know that we have good people, good managers that can cope with whatever will come.
So you think that now, lessons have been learned and there is all kind of a plan B in case this thing hits us again? Like you say, it may happen again, it can happen again. We need to be ready. We learned the lessons from the pandemic, and then this is how, our plan for in case of an emergency will be executed, that people are ready rather than be caught.
Yeah, I think they're ready. The contingency plan is there, and I guess the most important thing is to know that something will happen. And you need to be prepared, and you need to be aware of it. And I think that's part of the success that we had here during the COVID.
Always expect the unexpected, right?
Yeah.
Another question that I had in mind is, I work with customers across the globe, and every region has different regulations, different rules. What would you say would be the most important GDP regulations when you ship into Israel, or especially the Middle East? It's very unique. Into Israel, is it similar to the EU? I mean, you speak to companies worldwide. You're here a lot in Europe. What would you say that differentiates shipping into Israel in terms of regulations? What we can expect?
Okay, so in general, Israel started implementing GDP regulation 10 years ago. It's here. Everything is validated. All the standards are here. It's pretty much similar to the requirements in Europe. There is a slight difference with the role of the importer and the QP, but I don't want to get into regulation too much. In general, it's the same requirements. There is one thing that I always see on the suppliers' questionnaires that we get especially from European companies. So one thing you need to know, the Israeli Ministry of Health is issuing a GDP certification and audit only the importer, the manufacturer, and the wholesaler. It does not handle any of the logistics supplier. So you won't find a freight forwarder or a cargo terminal with the GDP certification. When we look at the questionnaire from Europe, the first question is, do you have GDP certificate? And in Israel, it doesn't work that way. Only the bodies that I mentioned get the certification. What we're trying to do with the audit I told you about, which is GDP compliance, is to start audit those suppliers on the same requirements that the GDP asks.
It's equivalent.
It's equivalent, but it's not, an official GDP certification. So this is the main difference for logistics supplier, and I think pharma companies that ships to Israel and wants to qualify their suppliers need to know that there is a slight difference, and it's okay to write it in the questionnaire, but the answer will probably be no, we don't have GDP certification, and that's fine. This is how it works in Israel.
Now, as long as it's acceptable and it doesn't create any problems in receiving, the goods into Israel or clearing them or having them approved, then it shouldn't be a problem. It's a question of, I think that every region and every country has a different process, and some are more strict and a little bit more demanding than others, but as long as it's, acceptable within the Israeli market, then it should be okay, I would say. You're the expert. It's nice to give an insight of how the industry looks like in Israel in specific. What would be then your advice to pharmaceutical companies, or even 3PLs that are dealing with Israel, service providers, pharma companies who are starting their trade or their relationship with Israel? What advice would you give to pharmaceutical companies who are starting or increasing their business with Israel? What would be your tip?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you. I think the most important thing is to understand the unique shipping process and regulation to and from Israel. If I start with the security, which is always different in Israel, so you must understand all the regulation, especially if you want to send something out of Israel. If you don't want it to be opened or screened or delayed, you must really know all the regulation about security. With pharma shipments, we don't want them to be opened and exposed to high temperatures. So this is the first thing that you need to know. We had crazy weather in Israel. You also need to know that it's relatively warm here. We are in March, and we already had days of almost 30 degrees. So you need to understand the risks areas and how you mitigate the risk. It can be proper packaging. It can be special services like a temperature controlled dolly. It can be I don't know, fly only at night because it's cooler, or other ways to eliminate the risk. Also, there is especially in the air freight a big difference between passengers aircraft and cargo aircraft.
Correct.
I don't know if you are aware of it, but passenger aircraft are handled by the airport authority, not by the cargo terminals, and it's a big issue. The SLA is longer, and the exposure is longer. And if you look at summertime, it's even worse. So I would say the best we do, if you can, is to ship via cargo planes. They also park very close to the cargo terminal, so it's closer and shorter. And there are some other things that I guess before you ship to Israel, you should learn very carefully all the regulation, all the processes in the shipping, especially by air, and then you can avoid those risks. That's what I recommend. And of course, you're always welcome to Israel. We can show you the.
So it's been almost 25 years since I've worked at Ben Gurion Airport. Can you tell me now how many cargo ground handlers are in Ben Gurion Airport?
Well, there is 3 cargo terminals. 2 of them are relevant to Pharma. It's about 50-50. I guess Swissport is handling most of the Lufthansa groups, Swiss Cargo, and the Israeli companies like Kal and El Al are handled by a Moman terminal.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it hasn't been changed for the last 25 years.
It's good to know.
Other than the 2 cargo terminals, in the past there was only 1. Like most places in the world, the airport is very crowded. We suffer from manpower problems, like everywhere in the world, and
Yes.
that's even makes things more complicated than usual.
Okay. No, it's good to know. Any other tips and tricks how to deal with the Israeli?
I can speak for I don't know. I can speak for 10 hours about how to ship to Israel. So I think in general, it's what we already mentioned. And again, you and all your customers are very welcome to Israel. We will love to show you how things are working here.
Excellent. No, I think it's great. I mean, basically, you need to orientate before you start any shipping or any business, regardless whether it's Israel, it's the Far East, the Middle East. No matter what, it's good to know what to expect and how to mitigate any delay, especially when we're talking about pharma, which is very sensitive, very costly, high value. And talking about Israel, like you mentioned, it's already 30 degrees in March in comparison to Holland, which is raining nonstop. Then it is extremely important to make sure that you know the business and the industry. Thank you very much. Toda rabah.
Thank you,
I hope
and
to see you soon.
Hopefully.
I hope to see you soon, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and have a nice day.